November 4, 2023, was the first National Park Service launch recognizing 62 years of volunteer service by Peace Corps members. Plainview, Minnesota, a town of 1,800 people, was the hometown of 4 of the early volunteers. The monument seen above was dedicated in 2018 leading up to the all-day event at the high school in Plainview in November of 2023. Ken Flees and Aaron Luckstein kicked off the event. Ken, seen above, was from Plainview, and was attending Mankato State College, now the University of Minnesota of Mankato, when the Peace Corps started. At 19 he joined the Peace Corps and was off to Brazil in October of 1962. Above, standing, is Aaron Luckstein, the mayor of Plainview, and the 4 keynote speakers to his right. Seated left to right are Carol Spahn, General Joseph Vodel, Ken Goodson, and Colonel Eduardo Suarez. Carol is the present director of the Peace Corps. Joseph is a retired 4-star general from St. Paul whose command, at time, included the entire Middle East. Ken is the head of AmeriCorps, an agency with an $1.5 billion budget, and Eduardo is head of the Minnesota National Guard. This video is almost 2 hours long. Unfortunately, Colonel Suarez's presentation is not complete due to a battery failure during recording. If you, the viewer, is interested in a specific presentation, you can use the timeline slide at the bottom of the page to advance the video to the beginning of a certain speaker's presentation. Move your mouse to the bottom left and a red dot appears. Above the dot is the timeline stamp in hours if applicable, then minutes and seconds. Drag the red dot to the desired presentation time. Here are the beginning times for each keynote speaker. You have 12 more seconds to jot down the time you may want to go to, if not, enjoy the entire video.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, save us as star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
You may be seated. Well, good morning. My name is Aaron Luckstein. I'm the mayor for the City of Plainview. And on behalf of the city and all of our residents, I want to welcome you here today. So thank you to each and every one of you for being here. Welcome to those of you that call Plainview your home. Thank you for showing up to show your support. And to all of the visitors, we welcome you. Welcome to our distinguished guests. We are extremely grateful for your willingness to share your time, your knowledge, and your experiences with us today. It means a lot. Before we get started, I want to thank our planning committee. I'll go through the names really quickly here. Ken, Alice, Amy, Deb, Charlie, Kit, Will, Dick, Becky, and Ben. To the Plainview Elgin Millville School District for allowing us to use the space here today. To our American Legion Post 179 and the American Legion Auxiliary. To our local Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts for their planning and preparation of this event. And to anyone else that I may have missed, I apologize. So today we celebrate what it means to sacrifice for freedom through the service to our nation, what ultimately is service to others. And it is through that service that we unite and we create the energy that is needed to achieve both our individual and our collective goals. So thank you for making the decision to spend your day here with us as we honor past and current service members. We hear from our speakers about their unique experiences and how their agencies approach the common goal of serving our nation. And you'll learn about our community's vision to create the first of its kind National Services Park that honors, informs, inspires, and elevates all forms of service. If you need anything throughout the day, feel free to come find me. We also have the City of Plainview table out in the front. Don't be afraid to ask for any needs for assistance. The other thing is Governor Walz. I used to work for Governor Dayton, I apologize. Governor Tim Walz was not able to be here today, but he did ask that I read this letter. The other thing is Governor Walz does like to joke that sometimes he gets calls from concerned citizens and he'll say, why didn't you reach out to the mayor? And the common response is, well, I didn't want to elevate it to that level. Dear friends, I want to express my great appreciation for all who have gathered today in Plainview, Minnesota for the launch event for the first ever National Service Park. As a former teacher, coach, and retired member of Minnesota's Army National Guard, I have a great respect for and a belief in the value of all forms of national and community service. It is so appropriate that you have chosen to gather today in Minnesota, the home of Hubert Humphrey, who first proposed the idea of a National Peace Corps in Congress. We are proud of that legacy, as we are of the legacy of so many Minnesotans from all walks of life who have answered the call for national service. Thank you for your leadership on this important issue. Thank you for the work you have done in the past for our communities, for our country, and our world. And thank you for the great work that I know is still to come with this powerful movement of committed individuals who have never stopped believing that the world can be changed for the better through the service to others. Sincerely, Governor Tim Walz. U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar also had a prior commitment. She could not be here today, but she sent Chuck Hackman.
In keeping with the theme, I should say, on behalf of Senator Klobuchar. I work for Senator Klobuchar. I'm her Southern Minnesota Outreach Director, and again, as the mayor said, she's unable to attend, but she did send a letter that she wanted to share some thoughts for this event today. So I will look down and read from the letter, so I apologize for not looking up as much. Thank you for inviting me today to attend today's National Service Park launch event. Though my schedule prevents me from being there with you in person, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize our nation's service organizations, including our military, Peace Corps and Army Corps, and all of those, AmeriCorps, and all of those who are at the event today and volunteered to serve our country. Your service is vital to the health of our nation. Minnesota has a long and proud history of citizens who have dedicated themselves to the service of others, beginning with the 1st Minnesota Volunteer Infantry, playing a critical role in winning the Battle of Gettysburg, all the way up to Hubert Humphrey, who helped start the Peace Corps. Our legacy of volunteerism grows. Minnesota ranks 3rd among states in the number of people who volunteer, and we cannot even begin to quantify the countless ways Minnesotans help each other out on a daily basis. In light of our recent weather, I'm thinking about the Minnesota winters and all those people who shovel sidewalks, deliver warm meals to seniors, pull over on the highway to simply help a stranger get out of the ditch. The City of Plainview is a fitting location for a park that honors those who have served, and I commend those who are leading in that effort. I bet you're volunteering your hours now to make this all possible. Beginning with the very first Peace Corps cohort in 1962, an impressive number of Plainview citizens served our country as Peace Corps volunteers and continue to do so today. National service is more important now than ever. Thank you again for the invitation to join you at today's event. I am proud to serve you in the U.S. Senate. Sincerely, Amy Klobuchar, U.S. Senate.
That's the welcomes. We're going to to kick off with the people that you really want to hear from. And so, Ken Fleece, would you please come forward? And I believe you're going to introduce our speakers. So, thank you, Ken.
Thank you and welcome to everyone for being here today. As some of you know, I can be a storyteller and an author, and so I know my cohort Amy wanted me not to get carried away, but or even be on the program. But Kate Bradford, who worked for Director Spahn, said to me, "You need to speak because this is all your fault." So anyway, I'd like to just echo what Aaron said about thanking all the people, the staff that has worked on this, especially Amy, Earl, and Alice Tidball on our board, who's put in an untold number of hours over the summer to make this happen. And of course, the Plainview Committee, the Plainview High School especially, that made a special effort to let us be able to use this place today. I'd like to thank all the participants that came today to speak from Serve Minnesota, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, the military, and also a deep thanks to the Southern Minnesota Initiative Fund for making the funds available to stage this event today. And also thanks to our political cohorts here, and also Aaron Eberhardt, who is representing Representative Finstead here today. So I'd also like to mention Randall Diedrich, who is a great friend of mine who served on the Governor Dayton's sesquicentennial Civil War Task Force with me, and he's sort of filling in for the General Scarcella, who couldn't be here today because he's the head of the 88th Readiness Division, so we want him to be ready for whatever it is he needed to do to defend us here today. I'd also like to start by recognizing people in the audience. I would like to have, and hold your applause till we're finished, all the people in the audience who are military veterans. Please stand. And so if you can hold your applause, I appreciate it. But also all the Peace Corps volunteers that are here today, could you please stand? And if we have any other National Guard or Coast Guard or military people of any nature here today, would you stand also? Okay, well, thank you very much. I want to thank you all for your service to the country. I'd like to start off about answering one of the big questions that comes up invariably from a lot of people, and the question is, why Plainview? Where in the hell is Plainview? And half the people I talk to call it Plainfield, not Plainview. But anyway, back, again mentioning Randall, back when the Sesquicentennial Task Force was on, we had another member of our commission who was Stephen Elliott, who was the CEO of the Minnesota Historical Society. At that time, prior to that, the Minnesota Historical Society and their funds generally were putting that money into historical venues in the Twin Cities, because they said, hey, people from rural Minnesota come to the Twin Cities on their vacations to do things. Steve had a different vision. He said, no, I want to put the history outstate, where people go out and discover the other parts of America and the other parts of Minnesota. So as a result of that, we were able to get state legacy funding in 2014 to put a state historical marker here in Plainview. The State Historical Society wanted to recognize the fact that Hubert Humphrey was the founder of the concept and the name of the Peace Corps, and also that in the early days of the Peace Corps, Minnesota was one of the big providers, and still is, of Peace Corps volunteers. So that happened, and at the same time on our Civil War Task Force, it was the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, and also there was a very prominent company from Plainview that was a decisive company that performed the action in the last decisive battle that ended the Civil War. Also, I think what Stephen recognized, like many of us, there's a special patriotism in rural America. I think when I grew up here in the 60s and the Vietnam War was on, I don't know one person from Plainview that was a draft evader. rural families are wonderful supporters of our country, and I think we need to do more to reinvigorate all of that and keep the history of small towns as a vital part of our country. Today we have such a great movement in our country of what we call the great divide between urban and rural America, that fissure that is going on. I think by doing more in small towns, we can do more to ameliorate that situation that is going on. Also, I think that there's so much history in small towns that we never know about. How many people knew that 4 of the original 3,000 volunteers that staffed the first Peace Corps countries were from the small town of 1,400 people at the time? How many people knew about that Civil War group? How many people knew about my favorite historical trivia question that I like to ask people? Who are the 3 prominent Americans buried in the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C.? I think when I asked that question, 90% of the people that laughed cannot answer that question. Those 3 men are Woodrow Wilson, Admiral Perry, and Frank B. Kellogg. Very few people remember Frank today, but he was the only American to win the Nobel Prize for Peace that was from Minnesota. And he was a tremendously prominent individual in his days, settled border disputes between 22 different countries. He was the great trust buster under Teddy Roosevelt, Secretary of State, and many other things. And there's much more history like this in small towns that we never think about. It seems like in our great deeds, we recognize our great military leaders, but we forget about those people that came from small towns. When we look back at military history, the most famous boot soldier from the First World War was a guy named Eldon York. He was from a little town of Pall Mall, Tennessee, and one of 11 children. When we look at the Second World War, we had a famous boot soldier named Audie Murphy. Came from a family of 13, of which he was 7th, from the northern part of Texas. Again, a rural American family. And there's much more history like that in all of our small towns. I even say, like in Plainview, one other piece of history. In the First World War, there was a famous episode called The Lost Battalion, where a battalion of men were, American soldiers were encircled by 3 divisions of German soldiers and fought their way out. That was the famous 77th Division. And the Lost Battalion, there was a group called the 308th Machine Gun Company. In that company was Harry Melvin from Plainview, and also my grandfather, who was from Kellogg, Walter Dugan. So there's all kinds of history like this in small towns that we need to keep alive, because the history is the basis of the pride of small towns, and if we lose that history, we lose a lot of what we're about as America. I'd just like to make a brief comment about my experience as a volunteer. I just want to tell any young people that are here, any other people, it led to a great life of adventure for me, working around the country, around the world, as a business and a social entrepreneur. So I had many experiences I would have never had had I not done that. Also, I think the message to young people here is when we look at the original volunteers from Plainview here, Chuck Rankins, who was one of the original 4, went on to work for 30 years for USAID in Asia and in Washington. Great experience in his life. One of the people on our board, Alice Tidwell, is from Plainview. Most of you know her. Alice has been in the Foreign Service, I don't know, is it 30 or 40 years. She still consults as in the Foreign Service for the United States. Adam Welty, who's another farm boy, son of a farm family here. He was a Peace Corps volunteer. Now he worked for the Forest Service in Africa, and he's now on the staff of the Peace Corps, I believe, in Washington. So those are just examples where service can lead to great benefits for you. And not only social benefits, but when we look at Peace Corps volunteers and other people who became entrepreneurs, I just know, for example, in the Peace Corps, in Wabasha we have the famous National Eagle Center, a multi-million-dollar project. That was founded by Dave Fisk, who was a former Peace Corps volunteer in Chile, and also he was a Peace Corps director in Chile at one time. In Winona, you have the Marine Art Museum, and the soon-to-be $35 million Marine Art Museum. The Fastenal Company And those were all founded by Bob Curlin, who also had time to be a state senator. He was a Peace Corps volunteer in Venezuela. So those are just a few examples in that vein. When we look at the military, even people that serve in the military, I think the experience of getting out into the world and learning, meeting other people in the country can lead to a tremendous opportunities for you. I'd like to talk about one person that I know very well, and that's my brother Jim, who's here. Jim is a proud Air Force veteran, and after his service in the Air Force, he became a leading developer of large-scale dairies throughout the world. He developed dairies in China, Russia, Mongolia, Chile, Morocco, only to mention a few of the countries. Could you take a stand up, Jim, just for a second? So whether you serve as a civilian or you serve as a military person or whatever, it can lead to a very adventurous life for you. Sort of in conclusion, I'd just like to say that one other thing that I'd like to mention is that in addition to Jim, during the Vietnam War era, I talked about these large families of Elvin and so forth, and big families are very intimate to rural America. So I came from a family of 11 and 10 boys, and 6 of my brothers served during the Vietnam War. I'd like to have them stand just to be recognized. So in conclusion, I'd like to say in this particular stage, I used to play basketball on this floor, and on the 25th anniversary of my graduation, I gave the commencement address here. The title of my address was, "Hey Joe, say it ain't so. Say you can't be what you want to be, say you can't do what you want to do." So that was the theme I wanted to get across to young people. Live what's in your heart, what's in your spirit. Don't listen totally to your teachers, your parents, everyone else. Live your bliss, be what you want to be. Today we want to just talk about service and how we can reinvigorate that here in our country. And we have people from many different platforms. In 50 BC, the philosopher Seneca said, "In a high tide, all ships rise." That's what we want to accomplish here today. We want to get all national service working together to raise the tide of service once more in this country. Thank you very much. Thank you. With that, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, who is Glenn Blumhorst. Speaking of farm boys, Glenn is a farm boy from Missouri. There's an old saying that you can take a boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of a boy. And I still see a lot of that farm boy in Glenn. When I say he was a farm boy, he was also in FFA. And I didn't even go that deep into agriculture when I was here. But the good news about that, when he was in FFA, he went to the National FFA Congress in Washington, and as it would be destiny, he met his beautiful wife, Kathy, there, who was also in the FFA from Waconia, Minnesota. And I believe they were in Minnesota when they enrolled in the Peace Corps way back, and Glenn was a Peace Corps volunteer in Guatemala, right? The other thing I would say, Glenn has been a huge supporter and aware of this project right from the very inception. In fact, when the marker went up in Plainview, you had to get exemplary letters from major people to support the marker there. So my wife, Millie Binder, who many of you know, she actually wrote the grants for that marker. She thought so much of the Peace Corps. And one of the people she reached out to was Glenn, who wrote a very illustrious letter to the Minnesota Legacy Association so that we could get that marker. And she also got support from renowned authors Bill Moyer and Doris Kearns Goodwin. So she had a lot of connections, and I'm sorry, Glenn, your name didn't go on the marker, but there's ours. So the other thing I wanted to say is one of the things that led to this whole adventure, when we dedicated the Peace Corps marker in 2018, Glenn was one of the keynote speakers along with Hubert Humphrey's son Buck. And he made a very profound statement when he was there. He said, "Do you know what I love about what is happening here?" He said, "with the Peace Corps and the military markers together," he said, "it demonstrates as a nation we not only need a strong defense, but we also need a strong offense." And that kind of led to this whole idea of the national service. So anyway, we thank Glenn for all those efforts. Glenn is currently the Chief Advancement Officer of the Peace Corps Commemorative Foundation in Washington. In this role, he's leading a $10 million effort to put the first Peace Corps memorial in Washington, D.C. He's been a strong and strategic and transformative visionary leader in many of the things he's done. He's worked for over 20 years. He built the NPCA into what it is today, and also with another organization. He spent over 20 years working abroad in various countries throughout the world. So, and he, as I said, he began his illustrious career as a 3-year volunteer in Guatemala. So with that, I welcome my good friend Glenn Blumhorst.
Thank you very much, Ken. It seems we could spend all day on introductions here today. It's really great to be back in Plainview, and I say back in Plainview because I was honored to be here 5 years ago when we dedicated the historic marker. I see so many Peace Corps friends and other community friends that are here today that I recognize. Thank you all for coming. I would like to thank our distinguished leaders for joining us today, taking time out of their busy schedules and the important appointments that they have to share in the little town of Plainview's big success that they've had here today. I am a farm kid from Missouri. By virtue of my wife Kathy, though, I'm an honorary Minnesotan. I've even learned to speak a little Minnesotan and tell some Moldy and Lena jokes. I have, actually, and drive on frozen ice and ice fish and all that fun stuff they do here. I am also from a national service family. My dad was a Marine. I guess he still is a Marine, you say, right? And my brother served in the Army. He was a Gulf War veteran. My uncle served in Vietnam, so it was in a way expected of me that I would serve my country in one way or another, and I chose to serve in the Peace Corps in Guatemala. Fantastic experience, transformative experience as it is for many of us. It really helps us generate that spirit of leadership and can-do attitude and perseverance and commitment to our country and commitment to all that we do. After that, I worked in international development work based on that experience, but also then returning back to the Peace Corps community about 11 years ago as the National Peace Corps Association president and CEO, and serving our community for another 10 years in the National Peace Corps Association. So last year, I was asked by a distinguished group of leaders in our community, former members of Congress, former Peace Corps directors, and others that form the board of the Peace Corps Foundation, to lead this flagship initiative of our Peace Corps community, which is the Peace Corps commemorative work to be established on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. It's an honor and a privilege to be leading this initiative, a bit intimidating. We do have $10 million to raise, but it is a project that's time has come. It's time for us to tell that part of America's story of service, and we're looking forward to having this place on the mall. You'll have an opportunity to hear more about that later. I think we have some breakout sessions, drop-in sessions, where I can share a little bit more with you about that. I would be remiss, though, to not commend Ken and the Plainview community and the planning committee and everyone here for just putting on such a fantastic event. I did meet Ken many years ago, shortly after his wife passed away, Billy. I know he was inspired by her and by all that she did to bring this project as far as she did, and Ken has carried that torch beyond there. And I know many of you have as well. But I cannot say enough for Ken and the leadership that he has provided, hours and hours of dedicated volunteer service beyond anything expected of him. Thank you, Ken. We all applaud you. We're so grateful for you. Thank you. So yesterday, my wife Kathy and I traveled from Washington, D.C. to Chicago, actually. And on the plane ride there, we were sitting in the airport at the gate, and I heard a voice behind me, and I recognized the voice, and from the conversation, I kind of pieced together who it might be, and I turned around and looked, and sure enough, it was Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, and I said, "Senator, very nice to see you. Where are you heading?" He said, "Chicago, of course." And we started a conversation. I, of course, thanked her for her service. Thank you, Senator, for your service, not only in the Senate and the House, but also in the military. As you know, she is a Purple Heart recipient, served in the U.S. Army, and was injured in service and received a Purple Heart. This is a true servant of service in our community and in our country. And I had the opportunity to share with her a little bit about what I was working on. She saw my Peace Corps pin. I had a Peace Corps pin on. And she said, well, were you in the Peace Corps? And I said, yes, I was in the Peace Corps. I'm now working on this Peace Corps commemorative work. We're going to put a commemorative place here on the National Mall. And I gave her a brochure. And she said, you know, that's a worthy cause. She said, thank you for your service. And after I had thanked her for service, and I said, well, thank you so much. And she said, you have truly served our country. You Peace Corps people, and she said, really are about the spirit of service in our communities and around our world and in our towns and countries. And from the, we all agreed from the far corners of Slater, Missouri, where I'm from, to Waconia, Minnesota, to Plainview, Minnesota, to Minneapolis, St. Paul, Washington, D.C., it's all about service. And service, I believe, is a solution to so many other things that we need to work on in these days in our society, in our culture, in our world. Right? So thank you for letting me be a part of this, and I thank all of you for your service in one way or another. We had military personnel rising, Peace Corps volunteers. I thank the Scouts for your service back there. Wonderful way to serve your country and serve your communities. Let me put it this way. Many times at these ballparks, people are asked to stand up if they served in different branches of the military. And not occasionally, but once in a while you're here, stand up if you served in the Peace Corps. But listen to this, stand up if you have not yet served your country. All right, if you have not, we're going to be talking to you about serving in one of these branches, or one of these ways that you can serve your country. So thank you all for your service, and thank you for all that you do for your communities. I am very grateful for you, and I really appreciate all that you've done. So today's conversation is a bit of a segue, in many ways, from a conversation that started with a commission established back in 2017, the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service. And that commission included one of the former Peace Corps directors, Mark Gearin, as well as several other military leaders and public servants and others. Thanks to public servants also for your service as well. And from that came a report that had a series of recommendations on national service. And we're going to have conversations here today with these leaders that will stem from those conversations and those recommendations and the findings of that report. I think it's going to be really interesting. Our job is to keep it rolling and going, but I really think that this is an important conversation for us to have now as we see stresses, if you will, or concerns about the level of engagement in national service, right? So I hope we'll participate. The audience will have an opportunity to ask questions after we finish with the main speaking. But I really want us to be able to ask questions and be a part of the program as well as just listeners. So, without further ado, I am introducing the introducers. And the first person to introduce the distinguished speaker this morning is Dan Baker. Dan is actually my successor at the National Peace Corps Association. I know Dan quite well. He has also had a distinguished career in the Peace Corps itself, I think about 13 years in the Peace Corps, as well as a couple of years now, 2 years now at the National Peace Corps Association. He was previously the program director. Dan's all Peace Corps, Mr. Peace Corps. He's really one of the greatest advocates for the Peace Corps that I have met. And Dan is going to have the opportunity today, the honor today, I would say, of introducing our distinguished Peace Corps director, 21st director of the Peace Corps, Carol Spahn. So, Dan.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Thank you, Ken, and the organizers for this event. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm really honored to stand here in Glenn's very large shoes as the president of the National Peace Corps Association, where we attempt as best we can to remind the nation that Peace Corps service is national service, as Carol sometimes says, and that there is a community waiting for you when you come home from service, chapters around the country that we support, initiatives like the commemorative, like the Legacy Plaza, that you can get involved with after your Peace Corps service, and a network that promotes world peace and friendships between countries around the world. The chapters that we support number in the hundreds. We are very, very pleased to have a growing membership of volunteers. And for the first time in 4 years since the pandemic, to begin welcoming Peace Corps volunteers home from service again, starting next year. We are in a world right now, as we look around, as we watch the news, where we know that we need more Peace Corps, more national service, more engagement with the world, and to project the values of peace and friendship that we develop. I was also a son of a small town in North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Look around my Plainview and see a lot of familiar sights. This is maybe minus the mountains, but this is a home, and you can see the friendships that develop in small towns are friendships that are very similar to what Peace Corps volunteers develop in their experience. The role of the National Peace Corps Association, just briefly, is to support, again, the volunteers and the chapters around the country that come home from service, and to promote and amplify their continued service. Peace Corps is not just about the 2 years of service overseas, and indeed, as Director Spahn, who I'm introducing, has defined it, Peace Corps is a global network of not just the volunteers, but the home state families, the counterparts, the supervisors and colleagues that we work with in the countries where we serve. And it's a very important reimagining, I think, that Director Spahn has done around the Peace Corps community, that we are not just going into these countries to help interested individuals. Indeed, we're working to change the language of the Peace Corps Act to say that we are partnering with these countries that we are working with. NPCA also does a lot of the advocacy work with lawmakers and initiatives that affect the Peace Corps itself. We are constantly talking to members of Congress and the Senate. I'm very pleased with the support that we've seen from Senator Klobuchar has been a very strong advocate and is eager to receive us in her office when we have our days on the Hill. We are a community without a Veterans Administration or a real structure for support once we return from service, and the NPCA strives to provide some of that career services and support to Peace Corps volunteers once they return. So, my duty standing here is to introduce Director Spahn. Carol Spahn, I first met as the incoming country director for Peace Corps in Malawi, participating in her staff training in Peace Corps headquarters. It was an honor to then work with her as a member of the Africa region when I was serving as a Peace Corps staff in Ethiopia. We overlapped in the Africa region. Director Spahn is an RPCV from Peace Corps Romania, where she served as a small business advisor. She then went on to an illustrious career working with Women International, Accordia Global Health Foundation, and working as the treasurer of Small Enterprises Assistance Funds. She also worked with leading private sector institutions such as GE Capital and KPMG Pete Marwick, before coming back to Peace Corps as a country director. Since serving in Malawi, she has served as the Chief of Operations for the Peace Corps Africa region and as acting Peace Corps director for a number of years, while we tried diligently to promote her nomination and eventual confirmation as the Peace Corps director. Thanks to Glenn as well for identifying her as the leading candidate toward the position that she now holds. It was an honor to get behind her nomination. Director Spahn holds a bachelor's degree from Catholic University of America, a master's degree in international development from the George Washington University Elliott School of International Affairs, and is doing an amazing job as Peace Corps director to remind the country that Peace Corps is still a leading national service institution and is doing a great job just representing Peace Corps across the country. Director Spahn, it's an honor.
So thank you. It's great to be here today in the North Star State. It's great to be here in Plainview. There are so many things to go around, and we've heard all of the things. So I'm going to use a trick I learned as a country director in Malawi and say, all protocols observed. We are grateful for all of you. I also would like to invite you all to turn around to your neighbor, to whoever's sitting next to you. We thank you all for your service so much, and really mean that from the bottom of our hearts. What you do really matters. Turn around and give the person next to you a high five. Tell them thank you for their service.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you. What an amazing group of people who care enough to show up, who care enough to get involved, who care enough to give up their time to get out from behind a screen and to be here with us today. And I want to give a special shout out to some of our Vietnam vets who are here today. I had the very distinct honor and privilege in December of last year to swear in the very first group of Peace Corps volunteers ever in Vietnam. And it was profound. It was profound. There were 9 of them. Just 9. It took 17 years to get Peace Corps into Vietnam. It is the work of more people than I can imagine to get that over the finish line. And that presence means so much. It means so much more than the individual work of those volunteers. It represents just a great step forward in our relations. And I'm incredibly proud that we are at that point, and I'm incredibly grateful to all who served during the Vietnam War, to all who have served in the military, in AmeriCorps, in Peace Corps. It's just an amazing community to be a part of. And I'll join I come from a small town club. My parents grew up in rural Iowa, in Panama, Iowa, a town of about 300. And I grew up in the outskirts of Kansas City, but spent a lot of time there, and like Dan, feel very much at home here in Minnesota, and just very, very proud that this park will be here in Plainview. So 62 years ago, a young president spoke to a very idealistic generation, a hopeful nation, challenging them to serve a cause that is greater than themselves. That same president, President Kennedy, remarked in one of his speeches, "A nation reveals itself not only by those it produces, but also by those it honors and those it remembers." And today, as we come together, not only to celebrate the National Service Park, we also honor all of those people, past and present, who have answered that call to serve, whether protecting our nation in uniform, engaging in communities here at home, or promoting the ideals of peace, friendship, and connection across difference in some of the most remote and rural villages in the world. And I think about that ability to bridge difference, to connect across difference, and how much that is needed right here in the United States today, and how we need to continue to build and develop very intentionally those skills so that we don't stay in the vacuum of our own belief systems that are reinforced over and over and over again by engaging with and talking to only those people who think the same way we do. So I think whether it's AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, service in our military, we have to recommit. We have to recommit to that dialogue. And I can say for Peace Corps, we are very intentional about how we work with our volunteers on what we call the self-other bridge. understanding ourselves in our cultural context, being curious about where someone else is really coming from, and working to bridge that understanding. Today's celebration is honoring the more than 240,000 people around the United States who have served in the Peace Corps and who have gone on that journey of peace and understanding. It honors all of those who have served in our military, all of those who have served in AmeriCorps. And that service, that intentional action of being part of something that is much bigger than yourself is what provides meaning, and meaning is what provides happiness. Meaning is what brings us joy as we connect with each other. And it matters now more than ever because we are grappling with some very, very big, very challenging, frankly, very depressing issues that are around us. And it is very easy to step back and say there is nothing I can do and to feel hopeless. But each and every action taken with intention, taken with humility, taken in the spirit of bridging difference and coming together matters, whether it's with your neighbor across the street, your community here, your nation, or overseas. And I want to share one of my favorite quotes. I'm sure many of you have heard it, but every time I read it, it gives me the chills. It's from Teddy Roosevelt. He said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how the strong person stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is covered by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, but who does actually strive to do the good deed, who knows the great enthusiasm. And if he succeeds, he will know the triumph of great achievement. And if he fails, he will at least have failed by daring greatly." And that is what we are here to do today. That is what volunteers like those present, it is what the pioneering volunteers who are out doing right now, those first groups of volunteers who went back into service following the COVID-19 pandemic, following the first global evacuation of Peace Corps in our history. Those volunteers went out and they said it's important despite the uncertainty, despite everything we've been through, despite having been evacuated. I met a volunteer who grew up in Sierra Leone. She was 18 when she came to the United States. She got her degree, she became a citizen, and she went to Ghana to serve in the Peace Corps. Amazing. She was evacuated in 2020. Went and got her graduate degree, and I met her in Ghana last month doing amazing, amazing work. That kind of commitment and dedication and answering that bold invitation to serve just inspires me on a daily basis. And I think I have one of the best jobs in all of government and maybe the entire country to be able to witness that kind of passion and enthusiasm and service and willingness to suspend oneself in service of others. I know that we have a tendency here at Peace Corps to maybe quote President Kennedy a little bit too much, so I'm trying not to get carried away. But there's one more quote of his that I think is particularly meaningful today, and I'm just going to leave you with this. "We celebrate the past," he once said, "to awaken the future." And isn't that what we are all called to do? in what we are here today to celebrate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carol. Indeed, you have the best job ever, and you're doing a great job at it. Carol, we commend you and thank you for your leadership. You're the right person for the agency right now. We're so pleased with the leadership that you've done in rolling out the new programs and getting volunteers back in the field again, dealing with the challenges of recruitment and other things, and just really putting Peace Corps back on the map again. Thank you so much. Who would have thought, speaking of maps, that Plainview, Minnesota would be the center of the Peace Corps community, right? The center of the Peace Corps universe. Here we are. Strange bedfellows, too, with our military comrades and their scouts and others, but it's really just a pleasure. We're going to segue now over to some of our fellows who have served in the military. I have the privilege today of also introducing the director of the Military Museum, Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum, Randall Dietrich, who is with us today. I apologize that I'm not going to paraphrase your bio because I don't want to mess it up. He has an impressive bio, a very short one, which means he's really important. Right? Randall was raised in Red Wing, so he's kind of a small town guy as well, as most of us are here. Spent more than a decade at the Minnesota Historical Society, including its leadership of Governor Dayton's very successful sesquicentennial Civil War Commemorative Task Force. He worked at Twin Cities Public Television, and his administrative and public relations roles led him to be selected as the executive director of the Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum at Camp Ripley in Little Falls, which is home of the Minnesota National Guard and the 34th Red Bull Division. In this capacity, he led a team that over the past few years raised $40 million to open a new 40,000 square foot facility in 2026. So I'm going to be talking with Randall as well about fundraising and how we get that done. But I commend you and thank you for your leadership on that role, and good luck to you as well, sir.
Hello. Driving in this morning, you might not know this, but beautiful drive-in, beautiful morning to make the drive. In Plainview, as you approach it, it doesn't look so different than a town a couple hundred miles west of here, Butterfield. Butterfield is another small farm town. Butterfield is home to one of my favorite World War II veterans, Bruce Langan. Bruce Langan is a Navy veteran from World War II. Bruce Langan went on to dedicate his life to service in the diplomatic corps. Bruce Langan was a senior diplomat in Tehran in 1979, was held hostage for 444 days, and was, again, a senior diplomat in Tehran when that happened. To his last day, Bruce always did profess a deep love for the Iranian people. The radicals he had some different ideas on, but he loved what he did, and he loved Iranian people. And Bruce, in my mind, is indicative of the fact, the remarkable fact, that Minnesota and Minnesotans really have been on the front line of history really since the Civil War. The first American soldier to step foot in Europe, to liberate Europe in World War II, was from Minnesota. Milford Hickey from Hutchinson was the first photographed American soldier to step off in Northern Ireland to liberate Europe from the Nazis in World War II. And that kind of legacy of Minnesota firsts continues even to this day. Understand, after 9/11, the American response to 9/11 was to drop the 75th Ranger Regiment into Afghanistan on October 19th, 2001, a few weeks after 9/11, and we all know how we felt on those days and weeks that followed that event. Please understand that those soldiers being dropped in were led by Colonel Joseph Votel, our next speaker. So he led the American response post 9/11. Joseph Votel is a retired U.S. Army four-star officer and former commander of the United States Central Command, responsible for U.S. and coalition military operations in the Middle East, Levant, Central and South Asia. During his 39 years in the military, he commanded special operations and conventional military forces at every level. His career included combat in Panama, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Notably, there's a lot of notably in General Votel's introductions, but notably, he led the 79-member coalition that successfully liberated Iraq and Syria from the Islamic State Caliphate. He preceded his assignments at CENTCOM with service as the head of the commander of Special Operations Command and Joint Special Operations Command as well. Following his retirement from military service, General Votel serves as Distinguished Fellow at the Middle East Institute and Distinguished Chair of Combating Terrorism Center at West Point. I know he's also on the board of the National Global War on Terrorism Memorial, currently being developed in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Please welcome General Votel.
Thank you, Randall. I really appreciate it. It's great. Randall and I kind of follow each other around the state here, speaking at different events, and I could not have a better partner. So thanks so much for doing it today. Ken, thank you for the invitation to be here. I hope the speed with which I responded to your invitation was indicative of the excitement and the importance that I placed on this particular event right here. So I'm very, very grateful to be here. Mayor, thank you very much for opening up your town, opening up your high school. There is a certain sense of continuity, of patriotism as I look around this high school gymnasium here in Plainview, Minnesota, and you see banners on the wall, you see a large one of the home team, and then those that we wish to vanquish when we play on athletics. All of the accomplishments, all under the cover of a huge American flag, and reminder that it is about students here as well. It just is really a sense of continuity, and my congratulations to you and to all the people of Plainview for what you're doing here and what you're going to do with this park. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota, kind of a small town, but not all that small. And I'm afraid I grew up in a little bit smaller family. We only had 9 kids, but I'm number 6, and my parents had 6 boys, and I was number 6. And then my mother wanted to have a daughter, and she didn't want to leave it up to biology to actually have a daughter because it had not worked out at least 6 times in advance. And so my parents undertook an effort to adopt Korean orphans to come to the United States, come to Minnesota here and be members of our family. And so we did that. My first sister came here in 1964, and that went so well that we did it again. And my sister Ann came in 1966, and that went so well we did it again in 1968, and my sister Maria came. In fact, when my youngest sister Maria came, the law at the time, and I imagine it is now, prevented any family from bringing a third alien into the country. And so they had to go through the U.S. government and get literally an act of Congress approved to bring my sister in. And on the living room wall of my parents' home when I grew up was an act of Congress signed by Lyndon B. Johnson that authorized my parents to bring my third sister into the country. And yeah, thanks very much. And my parents now have gone on to their final reward, but it was such a great and inspiring example for me and for all my siblings, my brothers and my sisters, that my parents did this, and they really instilled in us this idea of giving back to the community, of being part of what you do, of thinking about your fellow man in terms of this. It was an extraordinary example, and I'm glad to have grown up in that environment. I'm proud to be a Minnesotan for many reasons. I've always loved our reputation as a state where people treat each other with respect and dignity. I love the Midwestern values and the Minnesota values of hard work, of earnestness, of helpfulness, and of neighborliness. I love that the Union was preserved at the most critical point, the Battle of Gettysburg, by a regiment from this state. I love knowing that the first shots of World War II were fired by a U.S. Navy crew that came from Minnesota. I even love that every fall every faithful Minnesota Vikings fan declares that this is finally the year that we are going to go all the way. Hopefulness is another great Minnesota value to which everyone should aspire, I believe. These and many other things were critical to my wife and my decision to return home to Minnesota. She's from St. Paul as well, after a nearly 39-year military career. And today's event here in Plainview brings a new reason for me to be proud of my home state. As many of you are aware, in 2017, the U.S. Congress and the President established the National Commission on Military National and Public Service to promote a culture of national service. And the principal goal of this park launch is to introduce this theme and the values of cumulative national service as proposed in the Commission report and demonstrate the involvement, interest, and support for advancement of service in all national service entities, branches of the military, the Peace Corps, as you just heard, AmeriCorps, and the National Guard. And this park, as you all know, is a unique concept that is not duplicated anywhere else in our country. It is not duplicated anywhere else. And that it is located here in Plainview, Minnesota, should be a point of pride for every citizen of this state and indeed our country. And it symbolically recognizes that when our greatest values, in this case, the concept of and the value of national service, is embraced by those who live in the heartland, that we are really, really onto something. I hope to be joined this morning by my wife, Michelle, herself a national servant through her career, not just as a military spouse, but in fact as a professional volunteer. Her most recent work is as a courier for the National AmeriCorps program, and she not only does that to save lives, but really represents American citizens at their best, serving and reinforcing our values. I'm incredibly proud of her. She is unfortunately supervising the installation of new gutters at our home in Lake Elmo today, but we all have our duties to perform. So today I want to discuss with you a topic of great importance to me, and I think to our nation, and it's the value of military service. Military service is not just about defending our nation's borders or engaging in combat operations. It's about the acquisition of a number of skills, training, and experiences that are beneficial not only to the individual, but to our society at large. Military service teaches and cultivates leadership skills. It instills in individuals the ability to take responsibility for themselves and for their actions, to make sound and timely decisions, to set examples, to understand and accomplish assigned tasks, to be dependable, and to cultivate abilities to meet a variety of challenges that we encounter in life. It instills discipline, a trait that is invaluable in literally everything that we do. The military is not just about physical strength or tactical proficiency. It's about living up to a set of core values that define what it means not only to be a service member, but to be an American. And these values include loyalty to those with whom we serve and to our country, a duty to perform what we're being asked by our country, respect for each other and those that we serve among, selfless service, putting our country, putting our cause first, honor, integrity, and personal courage. And these are not just words, but they are principles that soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and now Space Guardians live by, both on and off duty. And the benefits of military service extend beyond the individual to our whole society. Veterans bring to the workforce a wealth of training and experience that is simply invaluable. They possess technical and tactical proficiency in a variety of skills and have undergone technical education for specific military occupational specialties that are directly translatable to many things we found in our communities. Military service also results in personal growth and positive emotional experiences. It enhances maturity, self-improvement, self-knowledge, resilience, coping skills, and pride. It strengthens interpersonal skills and relationships and teaches individuals to treat others with dignity and respect. Military service fosters a sense of national unity and purpose. It breaks down barriers of race, class, income, geography, and language, granting young adults the opportunity to see their peers, see and meet their peers and their country in a whole new light. It instills in them a sense of duty and obligation towards their country, revitalizing the concept of citizenship. Military recruiting has always been a challenging task, and with the current economic climate and competitive job market, making it even more difficult today. Even though there are approximately 30 million Americans aged 18 to 24, and that the military only needs about 160,000 of them per year to meet its recruitment goals, recruiters are struggling to convince young people to sign up for service. And there are numerous reasons why recruiting is troubled right now. Some point to low unemployment and the competitive job market, as I've mentioned, while others blame the lack of eligible recruits disqualified by situations like obesity or low test scores. The lack of knowledge among youth about military life and benefits, fear of death or injury, lack of patriotism, concerns about wokeness, and fallout from the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal are also cited. The generational differences between young people and Generation Z, the digital generation, who are currently the prime age for computing or for recruiting, and previous generations, like me, a boomer, also plays a role. The COVID-19 pandemic has also contributed to recruiting challenges. Surveys of young Americans who decided not to join show that they were concerned over physical or psychological injury, perceived incompatibility of military service with their desired life or career paths, and apprehensions regarding the treatment of service members. Now, the Department of Defense is implementing multiple strategies to address the recruiting problems. One of these is a program called the Future Soldier Preparatory Course started by the United States Army. And this program helps young Americans meet the academic and fitness requirements needed to join the Army. The military is also considered looking at entry standards that don't affect force readiness, such as relaxing restrictions on tattoos and not making past cannabis use and certain mental health conditions necessary disqualifying factors. Another initiative is to recruit college students and graduates into the enlisted ranks rather than for our officer ranks. The goal is for 1/3 of our new recruits to have more than a high school education by 2028, up from 1/5 of what represents our goal right now. The Army has also started a program that partners our combat divisions with recruiting brigades located in our communities across the country. And this initiative aims to help more Americans meet people in uniform and see capabilities of these individuals and the organizations they represent. And the services, of course, are also considering expanding the recruiter assistance programs. The current recruiting crisis is complex and will not be resolved quickly. However, the military is taking steps to expand eligibility and increase the propensity to serve without undermining the strength and professionalism of the force. The Future Soldier Preparatory Course that I mentioned earlier is one very successful initiative with more than 92% of participants successfully graduating into basic training. The trends that have created the present recruiting crisis are not likely to change anytime soon. And without urgent action to improve eligibility and increase propensity to serve, these trends could soon threaten the ability of our all-volunteer force to protect the nation. And by extension, the ability to populate our communities and cities around the country with citizens who bring all the benefits of national service that we have just discussed a few minutes ago. A return to conscription or the draft is neither desirable nor politically viable. So the military and the nation must continue to think creatively and take decisive action. This park and what it represents is an example of what we can begin to do. It's important to note that military service is not the only way for one to serve his or her country. Countless opportunities exist to support national defense in non-physically demanding ways, such as serving in the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps or the National Guard or in Department of State programs, within our intelligence community, homeland security, federal law enforcement, disaster preparedness, the Red Cross, and the USO. The goal is the same. It's to foster a stronger connection between American citizens and national service. And this leads to my final point for you today. Getting young people into national service is not the work of a military recruiter. It is, in fact, the work of the nation. It is everybody's job to help support this. One of the challenges of military recruiting is that many young people don't know enough about it to consider it a viable or a realistic option. And I suspect that this is the case with other avenues to national service. And my own personal story is illustrative here. As a young 10-year-old boy growing up in St. Paul, Minnesota, my family traveled to Baltimore to visit my oldest brother who was living there with his family, and we did this in the spring of 1968. And during one of the days that we were there, my brother took all of us out to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, Maryland. That day is as vivid to me now as it was then. I remember touring the campus, seeing a parade, meeting a midshipman, and trying to get my head around everything that I was seeing. It was impressive to me in so many ways. And I remember turning to my dad while we were there and telling him, this is where I want to go to school, right here. That I ended up at West Point and not at Annapolis is another story. But I think you can appreciate my point. Exposing young Americans to the opportunities of national service is something that almost anyone can do. Anyone in this room can do. Families, teachers, coaches, neighbors, scout leaders, many, many others can do this. And I think it is a way that we can supercharge the idea of national service. Your stories, your experience, and your influence really matters here. Military service is a valuable and honorable endeavor that instills in individuals a set of core values and skills that are beneficial not only for them, but also for our communities at large. It fosters a sense of national unity and purpose and revitalizes the concept of citizenship. It is a path that demands commitment, integrity, courage, and those who choose to walk it are indeed better citizens for it. And we need your help and the help of many others to talk with our youth about service and the opportunities that exist here, to help them understand the options that are available and to be supportive when they step forward to serve. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join me this morning. Enjoy the meeting.
General Drell, thank you so much for your words. So much of what you said resonated with me in the same way that it does with Peace Corps, where you talk about community and collaboration and leadership skills being developed, and so many things that I think are all about what makes service part of the solution and all that it makes in us as we serve. Thank you for your words. I do take exception with your faithful fans, Vikings, is that right? Well, I think that's an oxymoron, because having been a Kansas City Chiefs fan here since my childhood, I know that those Minnesota fans sometimes give up on those Vikings. But they'll get there one day. They'll get their Super Bowl someday, like Kansas City's already got 2, right? There. Okay. Before I get run out of the stadium here, let me just say also that promoting awareness of national service is so important, as you said, General. My apologies. That's what Plainview has done now with this plaza, this park that we're developing for national service. It is about creating awareness. It's about recognizing the service of military, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, and others who serve, and Scouts. And we're trying to do that on a nationwide basis. The Peace Corps commemorative work in the National Mall of Washington, D.C. will do that. But really just creating that awareness around the country is so important. I've traveled this year to 25 states. meeting with the Peace Corps folks and promoting the Peace Corps commemorative award and the Peace Corps itself. There is nothing like this anywhere in the country, as I think you said, General. And we need more of these types of projects. So Mayor, I commend you also for getting behind this and helping make it happen, moving this forward. Really so important that we build that awareness of the service opportunities that exist, not just in the military, but in Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, and other ways that we can serve. So without further ado, our next introducer here is head of the Serve Minnesota organization, and I'm pleased to introduce her. I'm going to have to refer to her bio as well, but Julia Conrad, is that correct, is the Chief Executive Officer of Serve Minnesota. She has a distinguished background herself in service, including AmeriCorps and Impact and other organizations where she's worked. She's been pretty much dedicated to service, it seems, for her entire career. And she's been leading Serve Minnesota for about 7 months, I believe, and doing a great job. And just pleased that she's here to help with our program and join us today. She has served as Chief of Staff at AMPAC, including Math Corps and Reading Corps programs during the years of growth in Minnesota. She's led AMPAC as Chief Program Director, and she's been very much involved in different programs involved here at AMPAC. She did serve with AmeriCorps, and thank you for your service, Julia, and has been a member for 2 years of AmeriCorps Vista as well. And she was elected president of the Intercorps Council, ICC, where she led a banner year for the organization, managing service days, events, and projects while collaborating with her AmeriCorps fellow service members on the ICC vision. So without further ado, Julia is going to introduce our next speaker as well. Thank you for being with us, Julia. Congratulations on your new role as well.
Well, good morning, everyone. I have to admit that I did not feel very nervous about speaking to you until the general pointed out the flags on the wall. And here's where I have to admit that I am from Caledonia, Minnesota. Right to the left there of the Plainview flag. And I knew when I walked into the auditorium today, I felt a chill down my spine. And partly it was because of this incredible event that we are all gathered here for. But partly it's because I'm pretty sure the last time I was here, I was on the losing side of an 8th grade girls basketball tournament. So be kind to me, Plainview. I'm doing my best. So I am the CEO of Serve Minnesota. We are the State Commission on National and Community Service. You might better know us for the 19 AmeriCorps programs that we operate in Minnesota. So you mentioned Reading Corps, Math Corps, Conservation Corps, College Possible, and many, many more. I would bet that there are several AmeriCorps alumni in the audience, and the reason why I'm willing to take that bet is because every year, 2,000 to 3,000 Minnesotans choose to serve their community through national service, which is an incredible gift. One of the things that I think about when I think about national service in Minnesota is, it is a privilege to get to work with 2,000 to 3,000 people every year who are choosing to serve. They are very different. They come from every corner of the state, but they are united with a common goal to make a difference in their community. And during the early years of COVID-19, when many of us were scared to even leave our homes, right? Hundreds of AmeriCorps members in Minnesota kept food shelves operating. They kept people in housing. They ran contact tracing programs, and they tutored kids across the state when they could not go to school. Minnesotans continue to show up. They care about their community, and it is such a privilege to work with so many of them in AmeriCorps. I am so delighted to be here, and I'm so grateful for this park and the recognition of the incredible work that so many Minnesotans have done on behalf of this state. We know, of course, that this work would not be possible without good partners at the federal level as well. And so on that note, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Ken Goodson. Ken Goodson is the Director of National Civilian Conservation Corps, another incredible AmeriCorps program that's having an impact nationally, including here in Minnesota. Director Goodson started his career as a Peace Corps volunteer and spent 15 years on staff with Peace Corps. And then those of us at AmeriCorps somehow managed to lure him over to the AmeriCorps side of things. And he has spent the last 10 decades bringing incredible leadership to the AmeriCorps community. I am so grateful that he has joined us here in Plainview, Minnesota today. Thank you, and join me all in welcoming Director Goodson.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Great. It's a pleasure to be in Plainview. I have never been before, but apparently both of my kids have been because they clearly heard your commencement speech, Ken, about not listening to your parents. It is a joy to be here in part because it has given me an opportunity to reconnect with friends, colleagues, and mentors, some of whom I've known for 30 years, some of whom I had the privilege to serve as their Peace Corps Country Director. Just what a joy. And thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for opening your doors and for the work you're doing here in your town to recognize service. AmeriCorps is the federal agency responsible for domestic service and volunteerism. The agency makes it possible every year for 200,000 individuals to engage in national service. We're a bit of an umbrella organization, and under our umbrella, a little bit like the military, there are 4 different branches. We have AmeriCorps Seniors, 55 and up, which makes me a little uncomfortable with that age definition. AmeriCorps State and National, AmeriCorps Vista, and AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps, or NCCC. There's something for everyone at AmeriCorps. We have full-time service, we have part-time service. We have service in your community, we have service outside your comfort zone. We have service individually, and we have service on teams. You name it, we got it. That's a strength of the agency, but at times also a weakness, as evidenced by data that shows that we have poor public brand awareness across the United States. AmeriCorps programs benefit 36,000 service locations across our nation, in tribal nations, and in U.S. territories. The agency awards $800 million in grants annually, primarily for the purpose of funding other organizations and nonprofits to mobilize and run their own AmeriCorps programs. This critical grant-making work can happen at the state level, such as what is led by Julia and her Serve Minnesota team, or through agency-led grant and award-making for our AmeriCorps Seniors program and our AmeriCorps Vista program, which is a close brethren to the Peace Corps. That type of work is led by colleagues such as Sam Shute. Sam, you want to stand real quick? The regional AmeriCorps administrator, he was with us from Minneapolis today. Always good to see you, Sam. I serve as the national director for AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps, or NCCC. Unlike most of the agency, we are not a grant, and we don't award our resources to other entities to manage. Instead, a little more like the Peace Corps, we're federally administered and implemented in partnership with a broad network of absolutely amazing state and local partners. We provide a full-time service opportunity for 18 to 26-year-olds. There's no educational requirement to participate, and no prior work experience is needed. We have service terms that are either 3 months in length or are 10 months in tenure. All costs associated with participation, including lodging, meals, transportation, and more, are covered by the AmeriCorps NCCC program. What the young adults need to be a part of NCCC is a desire to serve others and a desire to work with people who are different from them. For indeed, much like Peace Corps or the military, part of AmeriCorps NCCC's charge is to bring people from different walks of life to come together to work towards common goals. We pride ourselves as the AmeriCorps program with the lowest barrier to entry, both for young adults who are interested in serving, as well as for community partners interested in AmeriCorps resources to support their needs. Like Peace Corps, we rely heavily on our partners to provide housing, supervision, training, on-site orientation for the work, but we don't require a financial commitment for a community partner to engage with us. As such, we're a little bit like an appetizer at the AmeriCorps National Service Buffet. We're short-term. Our projects are typically 6 to 12 weeks long, but when they're best implemented, they're followed up by longer-term resources such as those provided by AmeriCorps Vista, Seniors, or AmeriCorps State and National that can foster the type of longer-term sustainability that our partners deserve and desire. But that short-term resources like ours are not built. At NCCC, we largely kickstart efforts through the mobilization of a team of 6 to 12 young adults with ample energy and strong commitment. Indeed, that's actually our largest challenge in implementing the NCCC program. The work is completed in about half the time that our community partners anticipate it will take to occur. It's a good problem to have. It speaks volumes to the potential of the young adults across our nation. AmeriCorps NCCC's genesis combines a lot of elements of service organizations that are represented by my extremely distinguished colleagues here this morning. AmeriCorps as an agency is celebrating its 30th anniversary, but AmeriCorps NCCC actually started 31 years ago. It began as a demonstration project at the Department of Defense. Congress's idea was to leverage a military model for leadership, high-impact, short-term action, and to target it towards addressing our country's most pressing non-defense related needs. From responding to Hurricane Katrina, where NCCC members comprised 50% of the total national service footprint, to being first on the ground in Hawaii following the tragic Maui wildfires, NCCC's rapid response nature and team-based approach continues to have military fingerprints on it. Even our structure has military DNA. Members serve on teams. Teams are a part of a unit. Several units form a corps. Members stay in barracks. One of our 4 regional facilities in the country is located at McClellan Air Force Base in Sacramento. And presently, we're actively engaged with the Department of Defense to renew a formal MOU between NCCC and the DoD, which is a statutory requirement and part of our founding legislation. This agreement, when finalized, will help advance not only NCCC and DoD collaboration, but many of the stated goals of the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service. For example, young service-minded adults who are not able to serve their nation in the armed forces could find a pathway into serving their nation in AmeriCorps NCCC. Of course, the same could easily be applied for applicants to the Peace Corps who find that they're not medically cleared to serve abroad, but under the AmeriCorps umbrella could easily find a service opportunity to give back to their nation and contribute. At present, this process is overly cumbersome, and it's one that both Peace Corps, DoD, and AmeriCorps could do better in addressing if we're to reach the goals of the National Commission. But redirecting applicants denied a service opportunity at one organization is only one possible synergy across service silos. I'll briefly touch on 3. AmeriCorps NCCC recently created and launched the NCCC Forest Corps, a partnership with the U.S. Forest Service to advance our nation's goals for wildfire mitigation and reforestation, as well as to provide the Forest Service with a pipeline of young talent that would become their future federal workforce. The Forest Corps is one of the first major components of the President's new American Climate Corps, and my AmeriCorps colleagues and I couldn't be more thrilled to have a chance to kick this thing off. The first Forest Corps members begin their service on June 1st of 2024. Applications opened on November 1st, a couple of days ago. Help us out here, get the word out. In the Forest Corps, young adults will spend a dedicated 10-month service term working on Forest Service identified priorities. As somebody who spent 15 years with the Peace Corps before coming over to AmeriCorps, I can't help but imagine this pipeline where young adults who serve in the Forest Corps find themselves serving in ag and environmental programs in Peace Corps around the world. Those programs are often of great interest to Peace Corps' partner countries, but have historically represented very difficult areas for volunteer recruitment. The puzzle pieces are there. We need to do better in connecting them. Second, staffing represents an opportunity I would highlight. When I look across the nation at our 4 regional facilities and our headquarters for AmeriCorps and CCC, you see 3 primary groups of staff. You see retired military, you see returned Peace Corps volunteers, and you see AmeriCorps alums. No matter the type of service they engaged in, it's my colleagues' commitment and experience in prioritizing the needs of others, which makes them invaluable to have on our org chart. Alas, that's not unique to NCCC. My AmeriCorps colleague Sam Schuth served his nation as a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa and Liberia before coming to AmeriCorps. This exchange of service-minded talent across our org charts is something that happens a little bit organically at present, but certainly is something that we could do better to formalize. Perhaps it is a shared approach to non-competitive eligibility. I know we would benefit from it in AmeriCorps. A third opportunity, the final, lies in more existential terms. Our brethren in uniform serve around the world, often in partnership with defense officials and community leaders from foreign nations. Peace Corps has over 62 years of experience working in cross-cultural settings. When we look at the state of our nation today, increasingly characterized by polarization and division, I posit that AmeriCorps would be better off and increasingly effective in adopting a cross-cultural training and listen-first mindset of our colleagues with overseas experience. Service with others, particularly when it involves serving alongside those different than you, is our path to a more peaceful and prosperous world. This is crucial not only as we think about the planet and the United States' role on it, but when we look inward at the current trajectory of this nation. We must face the challenge of taking increasingly loose threads, a red one, a blue one, a rural one, an urban one, a secular one, a religious one, a Packers fan, a Vikings fan, and weave them back into an increasingly unified national fabric. AmeriCorps and CCC is thrilled to play a small part of that crucial effort, and we are committed to doing better and delivering on it in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Grissom. I think it is actually more egregious to say we're Packers here than Kansas City Chiefs, just so you know, among the Vikings fans. I learned something today. I did not know that AmeriCorps had its roots in the DoD. And congratulations to your 30 years, 31, I guess, 30 plus 1 of AmeriCorps service. Thank you all who served in AmeriCorps. I heard a couple things there too that just really resonated and are consistent, I think, in our conversations. You talked about serving together toward common goals and breaking down barriers, and also serving with those who are not like us. And I think this is really what is such a tremendous value of Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, military service, is serving together with others who are not like us. And you know, that carries over into a lot of different arenas. At one time, I believe the statistic was that something like 70% of our members of Congress had served in either the military or the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps or some national service branch. And at one time, I think we had about a dozen returned Peace Corps volunteers on Capitol Hill as members of Congress. How many do we have now? One. Congressman Garamendi from California. We have much fewer military veterans on the Hill as well, too. And I really believe that camaraderie and that spirit of collaboration and working together toward common goals and resolving problems that we have a few problems to resolve right now and issues to deal with in our country, could be strengthened by that type of experience in our national service arenas. So thank you so much. Randall's going to be introducing Colonel Suarez this morning. And Randall, I've already introduced you, so go right ahead.
Always ready. It's the mantra of our Minnesota National Guard. And to be sure, our Minnesota National Guard has a rich and long tradition of serving the state and the nation when called upon. But just for a moment, consider the incredible skill set of our citizen soldiers over an 18-month period. A remarkable 18-month period that saw them called up by our governor to respond to a pandemic that the nation had never seen in 100 years. Within that same period of time, called up to try to quell the unrest that the state had never seen in Minneapolis. And then understand within that same 18 months, as we watched 20 years after the start of the global war on terror, the evacuation from Kabul Airport in August of 2021, our Minnesota National Guard members, 400 of them, more than 400 of them, were rushed to Kabul Airport to provide the essential security that was necessary to start the evacuations from Kabul Airport. Prior to the arrival of those Minnesota soldiers, no evacuations were taking place. So much like we watched on television the events of 9/11, I know many of us watched the heartbreaking scene from Kabul Airport. And just to understand that Minnesotans were there providing the essential security to get that process started. And it's probably no surprise to you that Minnesotans being on the front line of history so often, whether it's in Tehran with Bruce Langman, the senior ambassador in Kabul Airport was Ross Wilson. Ross Wilson is from Edina, Minnesota. So again, in those closing, frenetic final days of evacuation in Kabul, when President Ghani flees and leaves American forces there, the senior diplomat is a resident of Edina, Minnesota, Ross Wilson. Had the chance to sit down and interview a number of those National Guard members that went to Kabul Airport, as well as interview Ross Wilson. And as he's sitting with me on camera, talking about the 20-year experience and giving voice to that, and reflecting on the things that were and weren't done in Kabul in those final days, he will look right at the camera and tell you that there was no place he would have rather been than right there, because that's where he was needed. In those uncertain times, he was called to be of service to the nation, and Ross Wilson was that man. The National Guard made many of those things possible. Colonel Eduardo Suarez entered active duty in January 1985, where he completed basic and advanced training in Fort Moore, Georgia. In September 1993, Colonel Suarez completed active duty service and moved to Minnesota, where he enlisted in the Minnesota National Guard. In 1996, he graduated from the University of Minnesota's ROTC program and was commissioned as a second lieutenant. Lieutenant Colonel Suarez was deployed 3 times, to Bosnia in 2003 and 2004, Iraq in 2005 through 2007, and then to Kuwait in 2011 through 2012. In his previous assignments, Colonel Suarez served as the Director of Diversity and Inclusion during that civil unrest in 2020 and 2021. The COVID response focused on building on the trust and understanding between the Minnesota National Guard and underrepresented communities. And he currently serves as the Director of Communications, where he oversees diversity and inclusion program, government relations, public affairs, and community engagement. Please welcome Colonel Suarez.
Being the last speaker has advantages and disadvantages. Disadvantages, people are ready to leave the room, maybe it's time for lunch, so patience is overdue. But I'm the last speaker, so hopefully what I have to say is the last of you here, remember. So I'm going to plan for that and hope for the best. I've heard a lot of references about folks from the farmland. So, I'm a city boy from San Jose, California, but I did marry an Iowa farm girl. Her farm overlooks the Field of Dreams. So, one of 11 kids, I understand a big family, it's wonderful. I'm one of 5, and my mother was raised in Mexico, met my father in San Jose, and wonderful life and upbringing with a lot of great values. Military service wasn't something that Dad talked a lot about. Air Force, served at active duty about 5 years during the Korean War. My uncle was a 20-year National Guardsman in California. It was finished up the latter part of World War II. So definitely some service in my family, but not a lot of talk about that or volunteerism. Really, Mom and Dad were just hoping to get my act together. So just standing here alone is interesting because I never thought I'd be here today, much less with this prestigious panel here next to me, talking about military service in the National Guard and volunteerism. I really was just a young kid in high school, skateboarder, going down the wrong path, and so thanks to my mother-in-law, the son of light, got me involved in something that led me to the military. So I'm grateful to be here today. On behalf of the Adjutant General, General Sean Mankey, who oversees the 13,000 men and women that serve in the National Guard,